Anupam Kulshetra, could you please give us your thoughts?
Well, I think, beginning, I must thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to be here. And a lot has been talked about, the digital reforms and things like that towards the 5 trillion economy. So somehow, I had come here prepared as a speaker, but listening all this and seeing that there are a lot of youngsters, MBA students present, so the speaker in me has gone back and the teacher in me has come out. So I thought, let me speak as a teacher and just try to put things in perspective. How do we go toward the, 5 trillion economy and what do we do about that? I think let me begin with, the way I was introduced that, enjoy your life and enjoy your work. And I think the first point comes if we enjoy our work, and we know our work before that, we know our work, we are competent to do our work, and we enjoy our work, I think things will fall in place. I think that is one very important thing which we all have to know. We don't have to take our work as a load. We have to take it, we have to enjoy it. Now, coming down to the process of governance and where do we go towards this 5 trillion economy, I think I have just 3 issues there. First issue is the government governing? Are they coming up with the right kind of policies or the right kind of laws? That is number 1. Number 2 comes up, are we creating a kind of environment which is conducive, for the private sector to proliferate and for the private sector to deliver, what they're supposed to do and assist the government, assist the country, toward the increase in growth and things like that. And third, of course, comes up toward the private sector. Is the private sector living up to the mark? You know that we talk of 5 trillion economy, you're talking about the GDP, that how to increase the GDP, and you know that you talk of GDP, there are various ways of working out the GDP based on your income or based on your production or based on your expenditure, but all of them should lead to the same thing if you have the correct data. And I think that's where the first issue I thought I think a lot has been done to improve the data quality in the country, and I know this, the Secretary IT sitting here, the next speaker I'm going to talk about. A lot is being done to improve the data quality. That's number 1. I don't know how many of you heard the budget speech yesterday. How many of you heard from the students? None. Well, you should hear the speeches, the budget speeches and, the kind of things which government is coming up with, because then where do you stand with the government and what is your role and things like that. 3 things our finance minister said. She said that the budget is aimed at 3 issues. Number 1, aspirational India. Number 2, the economic development. And number 3, caring India. And then she went on to elaborate also, 4 points she put through. She said that first thing is about ease of doing business. Ease of doing business and ease of life, through digital reforms and through various other reforms. And second point she said about improving the quality of life through a infrastructure pipeline. And then risk mitigation towards the disaster issues and all that, on which we had, Mr. G.V. Sharma speaking a lot about the NDA. And fourth was towards the social security, the caring India aspect, issues of pension and issues of social security and many other things. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about the social security and the NDMA aspect, but I thought let's start with the concept of government and the governance. What all has been done and what all should be done. So let me begin with the budget first, because budget is a very important aspect, because it's through the budget that you put through the government policies in place. I don't know how many of you have read our ancient scriptures like the Ramcharitmanas or the Valmiki Ramayana. In Valmiki Ramayana, when Ram leaves the, goes for jungle and Bharat takes over the reins, then Ram sits and tells Bharat what all should be done towards good governance. You read that, you can Google it and find it out. So he says that Ayaste Vipul Alptaro Ve. It's a long shlok, but I'm just Ayaste Vipul Alptaro Ve and Apatreshu Kachidna. He says if your income is more and your expenditure is less, and then you are ensuring that your money does not go in the hand of someone who is a apath, who is a person who will not deliver, then certainly, things will fall in place. So that is, I think, one point, where again the budgetary issues have really come out to be very important. Budget is an instrument through which, various government comes up with announcements. And if you go through, like we did, I was in IPI and, working there, and we did a study in the last 10 years. I think we did the study in 2010 or 11. How many of the budget announcements were actually put in practice? And we found only 20%. But with this government, one thing which I really noticed, please go through the budget site and look at the budget. They come up with what they call an outcome budget. And they also come up, an outcome is different than output. Outcome is the impact which an output is creating. And they also come up with what all has been achieved as regards the last year's outcome. So that means there's an accountability aspect built in. And you talk of good governance, two things come up. One thing is transparency, second thing is accountability. And accountability already is built in the budget setup itself, first point. Second point, right in the beginning, the Prime Minister said, what is the government about? Is it about controlling issues or is it about facilitating? And he made it very clear that the government is all about facilitating, not controlling. Because the moment you go on the controlling issues, go back to, previous to 1991, all issues were about controlling, and we know where we ended up. Long, but, just stop at that. Second thing, very important, minimum government, maximum governance. That is, you don't have much of an infrastructure, but then you are there to provide more of governance, which is basically the delivery what you do. And in fact, the finance minister yesterday said, ease of making delivery. Because to me, governance is all about delivery. Have you delivered what you promised? First thing is that what you promised, was it in the interest of the nation? And second, whatever you promised, did you deliver that? And I'm not going with the kind of policies which someone comes up, okay, we'll give you free electricity or free water. That's not delivery. That is actually taking the nation back. Because you don't have to, you don't develop by giving free things. So again, like cutting down on subsidy and things like which a lot has been done, cutting down Yojana, cutting down on petrol, on gas subsidy and all that. Lot can be added, but, there's not much of a time to talk about that. So that's the issue of good governance. And I said 3 points that, one, the instrument of budget towards ensuring accountability and coming down on activities and outputs. Leaving the output but coming on outcomes and then measuring that. And second, talking about that government as a facilitator. And third, talking about that minimum government and maximum governance. These are the 3 things which certainly should be assisting, for us towards going toward this 5 trillion economy. I think you all know that we are just close to 3 trillion as of now. Then comes the issue of, are we creating a kind of environment in which the business should proliferate? And what is that environment we are talking about? Ease of doing business. If someone wants to come up, and do business, how much time that person will take in getting the business set up? If you go through, the various sites, you will find even today, with all the ease and all that, there are something about 63 or 64 clearances which a person has to take before a person starts the business. How much time does it take? So now they have come up with what they call a single window policy. That is, you don't have to run around and keep talking of, that take the clearance from here or there and all that. There's a single window, go there in most cases, and then from the single window, all the clearances will be given. So that's, again, one thing where again, the digital reforms are assisting a lot. So that is one thing. Second thing, what kind of laws do we have? Are we aware that whether our laws are assisting coming up of a business or not? In the beginning part of this century, 2 big scandals took place. One was in America, which we know as Enron, based on which the American government came up with an act, which they called SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And in India, we had the Satyam, based on which, SEBI came here, what they call the Clause 49. And all these have been taken into what we have, the company law today. But then when company law came in 2013, somehow it was felt, let us put a number of punitive measures in there so that to ensure the law will be respected by those, who are supposed to respect it. Over a period of time, it was realized, those punitive measures may not help. So if you see that in the last 1 or 2 years, a lot of changes have come in the company law. And even this budget also talked about, let the company law be amended again. And most of these punitive measures, in fact, company law, if you go through and you do a Google there, you will find at 75 places, the company law 2013 talks about that the person can be imprisoned for a fault, which was not there in the 1956 Act. So we thought, okay, let's have a stricter punishment coming up. But somehow, like I always believe, that it is not the strictness of punishment which will help, it is the certainty of punishment which will help, and somehow certainty of punishment comes down to the management and administration, and that is, I think, one of the weakest area in our country. We have good policies, we have good plans, we have good budgets, but when it comes down to, implementing that in the ground level, somehow that thing doesn't come up. So, like, we have good amount of laws which are there, and we have a judiciary which is also, kind of looking into, these kind of things and coming up, with whatever solutions are needed. And then, as I said, if the management areas improve, probably the things would be far, far better. The third and the last point, which I thought I can talk about and then finish with it, is about the issue of the private sector coming into this. What is the private sector doing? Is private sector coming up, with the kind of delivery what they should be doing? We've had too many scams in the last few years also. You talk about the PNB, you talk about ILFS, talk about a few other banks and all that. Where are we going wrong? The issue again comes up, I talked of Sarva Act, that in this private sector also, what kind of controls exist? And somehow it's the weakness of controls in those organizations which really result in these kind of frauds coming up. And that's where the importance of audit comes up. I mean, I've been an auditor, retiring at the Deputy CAG of India many years back. So somehow the audit is in me, and I thought, the audit reports which come up are actually ignored. I don't know how many of you have read Kabir, when he talks about, he says that nindak niyare rakhiye angan kuti samaye, bina pani sabun bina nirmal kare subhav. So, when audit comes up and points out there are certain weaknesses in the internal control, now those weaknesses will have to be looked into by the private sector. And then, in fact, this company law also went ahead and changed this, a very important law. Earlier, one auditor will continue auditing a private sector company for ages. And then the auditor loses the independence and is not able to come out with. But now they said, no, there will be a rotation of auditors. So after each 5 years, the auditor will change. You can't have an auditor, with whom you have become too familiarized and, he will, all goody-goody things. The auditors are not there to say goody-goody things. They're supposed to tell you where you are going wrong and then, So now, with this kind of a thing coming up, I think a lot depends on the private sector also, that how they are able to contribute towards this national aspiration of converting India into a 5 trillion economy. A lot of plus points, 2 minus points. One, that we have to improve the issues of management, the issues of delivery at the grassroots level, which requires a great deal of change. And I mean, I don't know how much more time will it take. And second, coming down in the private sector, that the private sector has really to come up, nation building. I think from the governance point of view, a lot has been done, and I'm sure a lot will be done. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kulshetra.